Hello and welcome to another episode of Discover with Spinati. Happy Saturday. Today we're talking about a very important topic, which is what you deserve in life is that what you get. And the thesis here or the hypothesis here is that you don't get what you deserve in life, you get what you tolerate. And I'm going to prove it to you scientifically. If someone disrespects you, let's say someone disrespects you, they say something that they shouldn't be saying, or they don't, you don't recognize you the way that they should recognize you, or they don't give you the importance that you deem that to be to your level of standard. Or let's say, for instance, someone kind of sideblinds you or whatever, or let's say you text someone and they don't reply to you or whatever it is. Okay. There's something that to you is unacceptable in terms of your level of standard, because you have to have a standard. That's where you start off with. Okay. So we all have a level of standard. We're not talking about that tomorrow. We're going to talk about standards. But let's say someone disrespects you according to how you define respect. And then what you do is that you initiate something that to you seems not acceptable. So you're giving him something that to them gives them some kind of validation that, hey, that's fine, it's acceptable. I'm going to keep doing that thing. What you're doing is that you're providing a positive reward. And what you're doing also because of that is that you're causing a confusion, a cognitive dissonance. In psychology, we call it a cognitive dissonance, in the sense that you are signaling different things to the person. Whereas, you think that this is the level that you should be receiving in terms of the interaction and communication, but you're receiving this, but you're still rewarding the lower level. Now, there's someone called Pavlov, and I highly suggest that you Google that man. Pavlov was a psychologist long time ago, and he's known with his experiment of Pavlov's conditioning. And what he did was, what he's famous for is he noticed that whenever someone rang the bell and the dogs came for the food, they started salivating. And he thought it was peculiar because they were salivating before they even saw the food. So then he looked at that and he said, okay, what if I remove the food? Would they still salivate? So then he removed the food, rung the bell, and they still came and physiologically still produced the saliva as if the food was there. And they were still wagging their tails, so their dopamine levels were still high, but the food wasn't there. So then he said to himself, that's very interesting. The signal was the bell. And that is what caused the dog to actually have a positive association with the bell, even though the actual stimulus, the reason why they're actually happy, which is the food, is not there, which is very peculiar. It's like, for instance, tricking someone into becoming happy because you gave them money, but in reality, you didn't give them money. They don't have anything extra. You just made them think you gave them money, and now they're happy as if they have the money. Like that to that level. So then he thought about that and he said to himself, okay, well, if we do this, then maybe something is there with regards to the way that our brain works. And he was absolutely correct. So then he went on to do many different kinds of experiments, which were revolutionary in the field of psychology. How does that tie in to you not getting what you deserve, but rather you get what you tolerate? Because going back to the instance of you accepting that respect or that disrespect, that level of communication, right? Let's say you text someone, they don't text you back. Okay, let's take that very simple example. So let's say you message someone and they don't message you back, and then you wait and then you message them again. Now, the fact that you're messaging them again tells them that you don't have to message. They don't have to message back. They don't have to respond to you in order for you to give them more signal, which is like the bell, right? Now, every time you give someone a kind of validation, like you give them a signal, that gives them validation and also gives them a hit of dopamine, which makes them happy, right? But that is the feedback loop. That's the exact same thing as the dogs when it comes to the ringing the bell. When they rung the bell, the physiological mechanism was dopamine, which caused them to be happy, and saliva. So it's a physiological reaction to a non-physiological mechanism or a stimulus. So the stimulus that you're giving that person is you're texting them, even though they haven't texted you back. So that is you telling them, I tolerate your behavior. And this is my signal to you that it's fine because I'm still going to give you that validation and that dopamine hit so that you can continuously operate at the same level of communication that I deem to be or you deem to be disrespectful. And what you're doing is that you're literally training that person. You're training that person to act a certain way. And so then when you start getting frustrated at that person because they're acting in that way, that causes frustration on both ends because there's a cognitive dissonance. This is in psychology, it's called cognitive dissonance. There's a dissonance or a kind of a confusion level between what is expected versus what is being received. And that cognitive dissonance is what causes all this mess, right? Because you've already rewarded that behavior, but now you're getting frustrated because you reward the behavior, you thinking that they understand that that behavior is not acceptable. And so that's why there's a dissonance there, right? It's like, okay, well, you already gave me signals that it's acceptable. Now you're getting frustrated because you've already rewarded me at something that you basically signaled to me that it's acceptable. What's going on? Right? So there is confusion there, and that confusion in psychology is called cognitive dissonance. So then you say to yourself, okay, well, what happens if you just, let's say you don't reward that behavior, right? You don't send that text back, for instance. Okay, we're using that example. Let's say you don't send that person a text back and you want them to reply to you, right? Because obviously you sent them text. So they don't reply to you. Now, if they have deemed you to be of significance so that they rely on your validation in order for them to get a dopamine hit, then they will reply to you. But if they've diminished your importance in their life so that they don't actually require your validation for them to get the dopamine hit, you need to move on. You need to cut that off and move on. This goes with any type of relationship, whether it's, with your, brothers and sisters, with your family, with your, spouse, with your employees, with whoever it is. This is like it's like a scientifically proven methodology of how to communicate with people based on the signals and feedback that you give them. And you need to move on. Now, obviously, then you have to ask yourself, is this my standard? Is this the level of standard of which I expect of people? Now, I'm not going to talk about standards because I'm going to talk about standards tomorrow. But needless to say is that your level of standard dictates your level of life. And your level of life is how you perceive life. So if you go back to the main essence of how you're perceiving life, how you're experiencing life, whether you're happy or whether you're not, whether you're pleased or whether you're disappointed, it has to do with your level of standard. And that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow with regards to having standard. Because if you don't have a proper level of standard, then you cannot have for yourself, rather, like if you don't have a proper level of standard for yourself, right? If you don't have a proper level of expectation of what you should be doing for yourself and how other people should, interact with you and so on and so forth, then you cannot have that level of standard for anyone else. So if you plan to be, for instance, strong and you want to be very strong, but you aren't actually living up to your standard, then you can't have that standard of being someone who's going to be protecting other people who are around you because you haven't maintained your own standard in order for you to have that standard for other people. We'll talk about that tomorrow. So tune in. It's going to be still around the same time in the morning. Hope you have a wonderful Saturday. And as always, keep smiling.